All right. So today we're going to be doing a Zuppa Toscana one pot orzo. So it's kind of like a pasta dish based off of a soup. And everything's gonna be cooked in the same pot, which makes it really, really convenient. That's one of my favorite things to do. It's really easy to make on weeknights when you have just one pot that you have to use everything in. So we are gonna have to chop a few things first. So we're gonna start with our onion. So we have one onion and we're just gonna want to dice our onion. I'm gonna peel off my first layer of skin. Just to get that out of the way because we're not going to want to use that. Just that papery layer. Everything else we'll keep. Sometimes it's really, really thin and it's hard to peel off. I usually just kind of try and get my nail underneath it to lift it, and then it should come. There we go. All right, so once we have that layer, that top layer of the skin off, we're just going to so we have our onion laying in front of us. We're going to want to do a dice today. So I'm going to cut through the root to give me two halves. We're going to work with one half at a time. The first half, when we dice an onion, we always want to leave this root end intact because that's going to help keep the onion together as we dice. So this end right here, we can take that off. I'm going to take a little more. That's good. So now we have a flat part of our onion exposed. So we're going to hold our onion with the root facing under, I have the root on my left side here. I'm going to turn it right now. So right now the root is facing away from me. And I want to cut, if you look at your onion, I don't know if you can see up on my screen, but there's lines there. So you're going to want to cut and follow those lines, but you don't want to cut all the way through the root. So we're going to keep our onion together. So I like to start in the middle and I just make one cut right down the middle. You can see if I pull it apart, it's still together here. So you don't want to cut all the way down. So I'm just going to make cuts just like that all down the side of my onion. Making sure not to cut all the way through. And then I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. So now I have my onion and I have all these long cuts that I just did. So I'm going to turn it back the way it was before with the root on the left side. And I'm going to slice down. Once I slice down, I have my dice all done. So this is a really, really easy way to get a whole dice done. And it's kind of sticking to my knife after, so that's why I'm brushing it off. And then with the end, I like to kind of lay it down and then I just take slices and then I just dice those up really quick. So that way we're not wasting. Right, I'll push all that over to the side. I'll even do the same thing with these ends here, just to get everything. All right, now we're just gonna do the same thing with the other half. So I'm gonna cut that end off. I'm gonna turn it so the root is facing away from me. I'm gonna make my cuts down my onion. On both sides. I'm kind of leading, when I make these cuts, I'm leading with the tip of my knife. Turn the onion back and then slice down. And once I get to the end, I'm just going to do those slices that I was doing before, so that I get all of the onion used. So now we have our whole onion diced. I'm going to grab a small bowl. We're just going to set that aside so we have room on our cutting board. I'm going to get rid of those scraps as well. I'm just going to take all of that onion and put it in a bowl. Set. So once everyone has their onion all diced up, just give me a thumbs up and we'll go on to our next step. Looks like everyone is good. Awesome. Let me just get rid of these scraps here. All right. So next for carrots, did everyone buy pre-shredded carrots or is anyone shredding their own carrots? If you're shredding your own carrots, give me a thumbs up. Okay, it looks like we got a mix of both. So if you have your carrots shredded already, just hang tight for a sec. We're gonna quickly do this. And if you are shredding your own carrots as well, then we're gonna do that right now. So I believe it was how many? Just a half cup. Okay, so that's what, depending on the size of your carrot, I would say 1 to 2. I have mine cut a little bit already. So I have a box grater here. I guess I'll use the smaller size here. So whenever you're using a box grater, you want to be extra careful because your fingers, especially once you get down closer with your fingers. So whenever you're shredding, actually, do I want the big size? Yeah, I'm going to do the bigger size. So you just push down. And then once you get close to the end like this, it's usually better to just have that as a snack to keep your fingers safe. I had my carrots cut up a little bit, so after this, I would have done one whole carrot. I'll look at what we've got. That looks like a half cup. So depending on the size of your carrot, 1 to 2. I was able to get it with 1. It was a little bit bigger. And then once you have your carrots all shredded, you can add that into the mixing bowl with the onions. If you bought pre-shredded carrots, you can just measure 1/2 cup and add that into the bowl with your onions. And then again, once everyone has their carrots in that bowl with your onions, just give me another thumbs up and we'll keep on going. For anyone just joining, we just finished step number 2. So we're about to get to step number 3.
Okay.
I see some people are done, some people still working. We'll take another minute. All right. Okay, so next we have 5 cloves of garlic. So if you have a garlic press, you can use that to mince the garlic, or you can use a knife to chop. I unfortunately could not get my hands on fresh garlic. There's a few things at the store I couldn't get. So I have some frozen crushed garlic that I'm going to use. But if you are mincing your garlic with your knife, I can take you through those steps. I'm going to use actually the end of the carrot that I have left to go over that. So if you do not have a garlic press and you're using your knife to mince, the first, I feel like this is the size of a garlic clove. I usually start just by thinly slicing the garlic clove, and you want to make sure you're extra careful with your fingers. You want to use your claw grip. Once we have our slices, you kind of just use that rocking motion. You go back and forth on those slices. You can use your other hand to stabilize the knife at the end. So you kind of just like rock back and forth, get your pile together. You just keep going until you have your desired size. You can wipe off the knife in between. And this is pretty good mince. And something like garlic too, when it's minced, like because this is a carrot, it wouldn't necessarily melt. But garlic, when it's really small, tends to just melt into whatever you're cooking it. So this is why sometimes we like to have this side of garlic when we cook. So that would be how you mince with a knife. If you have a garlic press, those are super handy. You just stick your garlic cloves in there and it comes out crushed at the end. So once everyone is all set with your garlic, just go ahead and shoot me another thumbs up. We will get started on the next step, which might be our last chopping. Yeah, so we're almost done chopping. We have one more thing to chop and then we're going to be all set with that. We're gonna want to get another bowl for our kale. So if you don't have a separate bowl out, want to make sure you take that out. How is everyone doing on their garlic? Does anyone need any more time? Yes, you can put the garlic in the bowl with the onions. Looks like everyone's all set. So we are gonna start roughly chopping some kale. I pull over a little bit. So usually when you find bagged kale at the store, it's kind of big. So we're just gonna want to get it a little bit smaller. If you see pieces that have big stalks like this, you can rip those out because those are gonna be a little bit more bitter and tougher to chew. So I'm just gonna start with a handful. I think we need 2 cups total. Oh, what's that? Oh yeah, 2 cups, which would probably be like around half a bag. So I'm kind of just going to do the same thing that I was doing with my mincing technique a little bit. Just going to have everything in a pile here and just kind of cut. Not with really any sort of specific shape or size in mind. We're just going to kind of keep chopping until we see that we've got some mostly smaller pieces. I kind of try and keep everything in a pile. And this will wilt too when we cook it. So it will get even a little smaller than whatever the size is after we're done chopping. I think that's pretty good. So most of my pieces are little bite-sized pieces. That's good. So I'm gonna add that to the bowl. This looks like around 3/4 of a cup, maybe a cup. I'm gonna do the same thing again with another bunch. I would say the measurements for these vegetables doesn't have to be super precise. If you have a little more, that's fine. Then you just have a little more veggies in the dish. If you have a little less, that's okay. Just checking for any stems. Right. I'm just going to go through the same motions, just start roughly chopping everything. Might have put a little too much on the board this time, but that's all right. Try and bunch everything together in between. Turn everything around a little bit so you can cut at different angles. one more pass through here, and then that should be good. See an outlier. Cut that one up a little bit. All right, so once that's done, we're just gonna add that into the bowl as well with all of our other kale. And then that is all the chopping that we have to do for today. Now we just have to cook. We might end up with some little pieces like this, like really small. That's all right. Ella, I see your hand is raised on the screen. Did you guys have a question? We have a question in the chat. Yes, if you have a block of Parmesan, you'd want to either shred or grate that. Whatever you can do. You're welcome. All right, and then once everyone is all set with your kale, one more thumbs up and we will start cooking. Clean everything up a little bit. All my dirty dishes out of the way. All right. Anyone need any more time or are we doing okay? All right, looks like everyone's good. So let me turn you guys so you can face my stove. Yeah, if you wanted to sub rice, to make it gluten-free, you could totally do that. I don't know what kind of rice you guys have, but my first suggestion would be arborio rice, because then it would almost be like a risotto instead of an orzo dish. You could definitely do, if you only had like white or brown rice on hand, you could do it the same way, and then we just be cooking it with the risotto method, but you can absolutely substitute in rice for orzo to make it gluten-free. All right, so the first thing we're gonna wanna do, we have our heavy or large saucepan. We're gonna wanna heat that up to medium and put some olive oil in there. We're gonna put about a tablespoon of olive oil in there. Let it heat up for a sec. We have our onions, carrots, and garlic in one bowl and our kale in another, and then we have our sausage as well. I opted to use sweet sausage this time, and I also did chicken sausage instead. I just prefer it, but so you could always do that if you don't need pork or you don't like pork. If you wanted to make this recipe vegetarian, you could also just add in another vegetable instead of the sausage. You could do like mushrooms or zucchini, or you could just omit it completely and keep it as is. That does remind me, I have some extra zucchini on hand, so I think I'm gonna end up just throwing that in, just so I can use it up. We're just gonna let this heat up for a sec. And then we will start getting some stuff in there. So while we get that heated up, we can go ahead and measure our orzo and our chicken broth or vegetable broth, whichever you have. So I just have a 1 cup measurement here. And since orzo is so small, I'm just gonna pour it in, which is convenient. So that'll be pretty easy to measure. I'm just gonna pour that in until it's full, just like that. And then for broth, whether you're using chicken or vegetable, we need 2 cups of that. I'm not gonna measure mine because my container is exactly that. But you can just have a 2 cup measuring cup, or if you don't have one that has 2 cups, you can just do one at a time. And in that case, we can just do that as we cook and as we add it. Feel like we're getting warm now. So is everyone ready to start adding stuff to our pan? Okay, perfect. So we're gonna take that bowl that has the onions, carrots, and garlic, and we're gonna go ahead and add that in. We're just gonna stir that around. We're just gonna cook this down for a couple minutes. Once our onions start to look translucent, that should be good. That's a good thing to keep an eye on. Or keep an eye out for when it comes to seeing how cooked vegetables are. I know you can't tell it with a lot of vegetables, but with onions, they go in and they're bright white, and then as they cook, they become more translucent and looking a little bit clear. So that's always a good indicator. Now, I stirred it a little bit. I'm just going to kind of let it sit for a minute or two and then stir it again. Can go for another minute or so. I can see my onions starting to get a little translucent. And then shortly we can add in our sausage. All right, my vegetables are getting soft. So what we're gonna do now is we're gonna want to add in our sausage, and we're gonna use our spatula to kind of break it up into small pieces as it cooks. So the recipe calls for a half pound. I believe my container might have been, my container was a whole pound. But I'm just gonna add it all in because I don't have another way to use it right now. So I'm just gonna add it all in. So my dish might be a little more sausage heavy. And I had to get mine in links as well, so I removed the casings. But now as we cook, I'm gonna take the end of my spatula and just kind of dab at it and break it up as it cooks so that we get everything to be kind of small pieces. So if you notice, everything that we're putting into this recipe, like we diced the onions, we shredded our carrots, we finely chopped our kale, we have minced garlic. We're gonna break our sausage up into small pieces, and we have orzo pasta or rice if you want to make it gluten-free. And those are all very small sized foods. So what that helps with is everything cooking evenly. It kind of helps with the whole overall taste of the dish because you have things that are all the same size on your spoon or your fork as you're eating it, so you can get everything in one bite. So I'm trying to break it up as much as possible. Once it starts to get cooked a little bit, it's a little easier to break up once it has that firmer edge. Breaking it up into the smaller pieces will help it sear off a little bit quicker too. Right, so we've got mostly small pieces now. All right, how is everyone's sausage looking? Do we look like we're almost cooked? I mean, it's gonna have plenty of time to cook, so it will definitely be finished. But does everyone have their sausage added in and chopped up a little bit? All right. Just getting my last big pieces. All right, now we're gonna want to add our orzo and our chicken broth. So we have our 1 cup. What is Someone said you can use squash instead of sausage. Absolutely. Okay, so we have our 1 cup of orzo. We're gonna add that in. And then we need 2 cups of chicken or vegetable broth. We're just gonna add that in as well. And just give everything a nice stir. And then once we have that added in, we just want to wait for that to come to a simmer. So once we start to see some bubbles, we're going to cover it and then we'll let it cook for a little bit. All right, I've almost got some bubbles forming. We're getting there.
Child was
All right, so I'm starting to have some bubbles form. I can hear it too. So once it comes to a simmer, we want to take our lid, cover our pot, and then we're gonna have it cook for, it says about 6 minutes. I'm gonna set a timer for 4 so we can check on it. Oh, and Serena made a good point in the chat that you can brown the sausage in a separate pan so you don't have the fat and the liquid that comes out in the dish. So if you're not using chicken sausage, which is less fattier, you could always do that too and have that drained out before adding the before adding the sausage into the dish. That's a great point. Thanks for making that comment. So for in the pan for simmering, you want to look for bubbles. So I'll take mine off again. This might be a little high. Mine's, hold on. Let me put the lid down. So I'm going to lower my heat a little bit. But simmering is more of a low bubble. So this is more of a almost boil. So that's why I lowered my heat. But once you start to see some bubbles form, that's when we have a simmer, and the bubbles are usually smaller and they're not super loud. So I just lowered my heat a little bit to keep it at a simmer. And then I set a 4-minute timer just so that we can check on it. I know the recipe says 6 minutes, so we might keep cooking it after that, but I just want to check on it a little bit through. And in the meantime, I'm going to clean up a few dishes, keep my area clean. And then when our timer goes off, we can head back to our stove. Because one of the best things that I have learned is to clean while you cook. So that way, once you're done cooking, there's not a whole pile of dishes to have. And I'm also gonna go grab my charger because it looks like my laptop is on low battery. My timer just has 30 seconds left now. So we'll look at it in a sec. Here, just gonna take a look. I've still got some heavy bubbles. So I'm gonna turn my heat down a little bit more. You see, most of our broth is getting absorbed as the orzo cooks.
Okay, I found this on the web for most of our.
Giving it a stir, and I'm gonna let it cook the rest of the way for another minute or so with the lid off. Just so I can keep an eye on it, because my orzo does look like it's almost cooked as well. And we are almost there. So while our orzo finishes up, we need to measure 1 cup of milk. We have our kale ready. I'm gonna throw my zucchini in quick. What I had left. We're gonna need one cup measuring cup for the milk. I don't know what was up with my grocery store today, but there was none of the milk that I usually get either. So I got a little half and half because that was the closest thing I could really find. So I'm gonna use a little bit less of that since it's got some cream in there too. I do have oat milk on hand, but I don't tend to cook with it. But you certainly can. We're just gonna want to measure our milk. All right, and now that we've had the orzo cooking for another minute or so and got into that 6-minute total, we're gonna go ahead and add in our kale and the milk that we just measured. And our pot is starting to look kind of full, so when you mixing everything, just be careful. Like I mentioned before, the kale is going to wilt down once it's mixed in with everything. So just kind of folding it in there. And it should wilt pretty quickly.
Quick question.
Yes,
Did you add zucchini pieces before?
I did. I just had
Okay.
that left over in my fridge
Okay.
and I wanted to get rid of them, so I
Ah,
just threw them in.
nice.
But you certainly can if you have some
Yeah.
handy
Thank you.
too.
Thanks, Sophie.
Right, so I can see the kale is starting to wilt. Most of my liquid is absorbed, which is great. There's just enough that makes it kind of like a saucy dish. One little patch here. Get mixed, and then we're good. Then the last thing to add is a half cup of Parmesan. I'm gonna get my half cup. I have my half cup here of my grated Parm. I'm just gonna scoop that in there and sprinkle it and then mix that all in. And if you're looking to make the recipe either vegan or vegetarian, you can sub for, I know they make dairy-free Parmesan now, or also nutritional yeast is a really good substitute that has a cheesy flavor. Just gonna mix that all together. And then that is our last step. According to the recipe, it does say if you want, you can top it with a little fresh squeeze of lemon before you serve it. So you would add that after it comes off the stove. So that fresh lemon flavor really pokes out. All right, so now I'm going to turn my heat off. All right, does anyone have any questions about the recipe, any of the steps before we get going for today? Okay, seems like no questions, which is great. Oh, Jake asked about salt and pepper. You certainly can add salt and pepper. I would taste it first just because we do have some salt in there from the broth and the Parmesan. So it should be pretty salty, but you can always add more to your dish if you'd like. So before we head off, I would love to take a picture with everyone's finished orzo. So I'll give everyone a sec to get ready and then we'll do a countdown to take our picture. And if you're holding your pot, be careful. I'm going to use a oven mitt just to be safe. All right, let me get this ready. All right, I'm going to count down from 3, okay? Just grab this. Ready? 3. Oh, hold on. I gotta get it going again. I lost it. Okay. 3, 2, 1. Smile. Perfect. All right. Thank you guys for joining today. Hope everyone enjoyed the recipe. It certainly makes enough to have some leftovers, which is also great. If I don't see you soon, I'll see you next month. And like I said, April 6th. So we're going to go about a month again. So I hope to see you guys all there. I'll send an email out tomorrow with the recording and the recipe again, in case anyone missed it. Thank you guys. Have a great rest of your Sunday. Bye.